What's up, everybody, and welcome back. My name is Derek, author and webmaster of Gematrinator.com. In today's edition of the Superstream, the 98th Superstream, we'll be focusing on an NFL mega riddle today. Philip Rivers, the former Chargers and Colts quarterback who spent a whopping 5 years out of the NFL, has unretired and signed a contract with the Indianapolis Colts following the injury of their star quarterback Daniel Jones, who tore his Achilles this past Sunday. A torn Achilles, a very familiar injury, especially on this channel, which is an injury that we've decoded many times. Throughout this video, we're going to explain how this all connects to the Papacy, as Pope Leo was gifted a white horse in October of this year. Pope Leo, of course, the first American pope who was elected back in May. We'll also be looking at how this all connects to the 2024 Indianapolis Eclipse. On April 8th of last year, the second of two total solar eclipses swept over the United States in less than a decade. And this one went directly over the city of Indianapolis, Indiana. So we will be exploring how this huge NFL news story connects to that. And then finally, we'll look at how this connects to John Cena, the famous WWE superstar who will be having his last ever WWE match this coming Saturday. John Cena, the never seen 17, as he's called, the only 17-time champion in the history of professional wrestling, or at least the WWE. And this is a big part of the riddle. John Cena retiring after winning 17 championships, the never seen 17. Well, Philip Rivers, who is returning with the Colts, wore number 17 for the entirety of his NFL career, which ended with Indianapolis back in 2020. Before re-signing with the team this year. Number 17 was also the number worn by Colts quarterback Daniel Jones, who was injured on Sunday, suffering the torn Achilles. Now, what makes this so intriguing is that Daniel Jones used to play for New York City and the New York Giants. Well, back in 2023, another quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, who was playing for the New York Jets, tore his Achilles tendon. If you recall this, I did a video that you can find linked below in the description. And this happened on the date September 11th of 2023. And as you see here, Rodgers connected heavily to the 9/11 code. Well, when Daniel Jones got injured, it was 91,101 days after the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So just like Rodgers, again, one New York quarterback tearing his Achilles on the date 9/11, now we get a former New York quarterback tearing his Achilles when the United States was 91,101 days old. Those, of course, the same 5 digits in the date 9/11/01, which was, of course, the date of the terror attacks in New York City. So again, Pope Leo gifted this white horse on October 15th. And I can't understate how happy Pope Leo looked to be here in receiving this horse. Now, the Indianapolis Colts have been a huge topic on this channel for the last several months, and this all began with the death of Jim Irsay, the owner of the Indianapolis Colts, who passed away back in May of 2025. Notice how the name Irsay has double gematria of 36 in our reduction ciphers. the reduction or Pythagorean method of gematria, two of the base 4 methods that we'll be looking at. The name Ursay, 36 and 36, and he died exactly 3,636 weeks after the birth of Pope Leo, the first American pope. Now, there was actually another story I talked about in connection to the Indianapolis Colts just last month. Back on November 7th, an 18-year-old woman named Anna Kepner was found dead on a Carnival cruise ship, with her body being returned to Miami on November 9th. Now, I did a video on this over on Cody's channel at Decoding with Cody. You can find our video on Anna Kepner and this Indianapolis Colts riddle down here. You can also find this on my Rumble channel, which is also linked below in the description, which serves as a backup for my primary YouTube channel. And it is interesting, we did this hour-and-a-half long video talking about Anna Kepner and how it's all synced up to the Indianapolis Colts. Well, just think of this, right? Because Kepner died on the 7th, and news of her death broke on the 9th. November 9th is when the Indianapolis Colts were in Berlin, Germany, and that was their last win to this very date. Well, now this month, exactly 1 month later, Daniel Jones gets hurt on the 7th, and then 2 days later, on the 9th, Philip Rivers returns to the Colts. So there's definitely a lot to unpack with all of this. But as we do in the Super Stream, I'm going to try and keep this pretty focused. So to start, we're going to look at this number 17, which is the jersey number shared between Daniel Jones, the former number of Philip Rivers, and again, John Cena, the 17-time world champion of professional wrestling. When Jim Irsay passed away on May 21st of this year, it was 590 days after Yale University turned 322 years old in the year 2023. Now, of course, the Skull and Bones Code, a huge topic of this channel, and one that is running daily in our mainstream media. Consider how the Colts won their 572nd game in franchise history in Berlin, Germany. 572, the Latin gematria of the phrase skull and bones. Of course, Latin gematria, the only cipher I teach that's not based in the current alphabetic order. It instead uses the ancient 23-letter classical Latin order. And the Colts still have 572 wins. They have not won a game in the last month. If you instead use the ampersand, skull and bones equals 527. And 527 is the birthday of former quarterback Daniel Jones, May 27th. 527 is also the gematria of the film Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which was a 2023 rehash of the Indiana Jones franchise. And of course, ever since Daniel Jones went to Indianapolis, they've been calling him Indiana Jones. And think about how the etymology of the name Jones comes from the name John. Speaking of etymology, the first name Philip literally means lover of horses, as it's translated from Greek. And this is perfect because the Colts are one of 3 horse teams in the National Football League. Philip Rivers played most of his career with one of the other horse teams, the Los Angeles Chargers, or San Diego Chargers as they used to be called. Of course, John Cena just had his last ever PLE, or pay-per-view match, in the city of San Diego, where he lost the Intercontinental Championship to Dominic Mysterio. But yeah, the Chargers from Los Angeles. This comes from the horse theme, a war horse, a charger. Of course, the other horse team is the Denver Broncos, who are enjoying their most successful season since the exit of Peyton Manning, with quarterback Bo Nix at the helm. So all the way back to this alignment now, Jim Irsay dead 590 days after Yale's special anniversary. His death was on the same day that the Indiana Pacers won their 59th game of the season. That was the game where Tyrese Halliburton made the choking symbol to the New York Knicks. Of course they were playing New York, right? This is a big 9/11 riddle. Reports from earlier in that day suggested that Jim Irsay was originally found alive choking on his own vomit. Now, the word kill equals both 59 and 17. And 59 is the 17th prime number, bringing us to the jersey number of these Colts quarterbacks. Irsay's death was even on a date with reduced numerology of 17, a number that is very familiar to stories of death and early demise. Well, when Daniel Jones got hurt on Sunday, that was also on a date with reduced numerology of 17, the number on both their jerseys. Prior to his retirement in 2021, Philip Rivers played 17 seasons in the NFL. Now, I want to show you something very interesting about the number 17. In the reverse standard method, this cipher, structured identically to Latin, but instead uses the current 26-letter alphabetic order. Notice how the number 17 equals 1700. In both of our primary extended methods, the phrase Philip Rivers unretiring sums to 1700 in both of these ciphers. Shout out again to Cody for sending me this one. I know he was also talking to Sean, who's got a channel, Widow's Son. And what are the odds of this, right? Two ciphers that are not, they do not share the same numerology. This is very rare to have the same gematria in both of these methods. They 1700 in both. If Philip Rivers plays this Sunday against the Seahawks, notice how this game falls on another date with 17 numerology and also leaves 17 days in the year. Well, these two quarterbacks who wear number 17, their birthdays are separated by 170 days. In fact, Rivers signed with the Colts a span of 170 days before Jones' birthday. In the alphabetic order, when you write out the number 17, you get this value of 109. This reflects a date, October 9th, which happens to be the founding date of Yale University. Notice how Pope Leo was elected exactly 1 year and 7 months after Yale's 322nd birthday. And his papal name, Leo XIV, equals 170 with capital letters. Capitals mixed maintains the alphabetic order but mixes capital and small letters together, also known as the classroom cipher. Many kindergarten classrooms show us the alphabet like that. Yale's Skull and Bone anniversary was even on a date with 17 numerology. And of course, this all connects to the moon, which equals 170 in Latin Gematria. Coming up this weekend, John Cena will have his last ever WWE match. And that date falls 170 days after the date of his WWE debut, all the way back in 2002. Now, Yale's Skull and Bones Society has a very special alignment to this month. Notice how the society was founded in December of 1832. That means just this month, they turned 193 years old. Now, we'll look at this number in a little bit, but what's also interesting is that this is 10,070 weeks for yet another 17. "193 is the ordinal gematria of the new pope's real name, Robert Prevost. Just like Roman Catholic Church. How appropriate. Of course, Pope Leo was born on the 14th of September, or 14/9, as it's written in most of the world. This is the value of skull and bones in ordinal. "193 is the 44th prime number. And this is perfect because Philip Rivers turned 44 years old just one day before his return to the NFL. And in reverse reduction, the name Rivers has matching 44 gematria with the number 17. Daniel Jones went down on a date with 44 numerology in addition to 17. Also notice how the Pope was 44 months old when Jim Irsay was born. So next up, I want to look at how this is connected to the eclipse that passed over Indianapolis. Again, back on April 8th of 2024. We got this eclipse over the state of Indiana and the Colts' home stadium. Now, we start with the spelling of the number 17 once again. This time using prime numbers. This cipher, based in the alphabetic order, but notice how only the associated prime numbers 1 through 26 are used. So here we see that 17 equals 347, which is a prime number. And it's a very important prime number, the 69th prime. The Brotherhood of Death, the nickname for Skull and Bones, also has this 347, like sacrifice in Hebrew. But it's the 69th prime, and this connects to the Catholic Church and their new Pope Prevost, which equals 690. He's the Bishop of Rome who took over for the Jesuit order at the Catholic Church. All 69. Indiana Jones equals 690. And Indiana Jones, or Daniel, just tore his Achilles. Achilles equals 69 in the alphabetic order. This Achilles tear was a span of 609 days after the total eclipse over Indianapolis. Eclipse equals 69. So does both eclipse of the sun and eclipse the sun. The city of Indianapolis equals 69, while Colts is 69 in ordinal. Philip Rivers now unretires. Unretires equals 609. And check out this alignment. Pope Leo was exactly 1,369 days old when Jim Irsay was born, and exactly 1,369 weeks old when Philip Rivers was born. When Pope Leo was gifted his white horse, Daniel Jones was 10,369 days of age. Worth noting that the number 1,369 has matching numbers with both Philip Rivers and Indianapolis. But there's more to do here. Now, we looked at the number 69, as the word eclipse has this value. But what about the phrase total solar eclipse? Here we get the number 202, a big number to the National Football League, which gives us the 220. Of course, 22 players on the field for every play. Now, yesterday's shocking news about Rivers' return fell on the date leaving 22 days on the calendar. This was also 20 months and 2 days after the Indianapolis Eclipse. Furthermore, it was 202 days after the death of Colts owner Jim Irsay. Total solar eclipse, 202. Yesterday was also exactly 2 years and 2 months after Yale's Skull and Bones anniversary back in 2023. The Brotherhood of Death sums to 220, while Skull and Bones equals 202. And I think it's worth noting that the eclipse over Indianapolis was exactly 22 months before Super Bowl 60. Now, this is not to suggest that the Colts will be playing in Super Bowl 60. I mean, I think it would be hilarious to see a 44-year-old Rivers slinging it in the Super Bowl, but I don't think it'll be happening. Another connection is the number 79, which is the 22nd prime number. Notice how the Indianapolis Colts has this 79 connection. And Daniel Jones got hurt 790 days after Yale's special anniversary. Now, there's also an intriguing golden ratio riddle to be seen here. Now, this isn't the first time I've talked about the golden ratio in relation to the NFL and horses. Now, if you go all the way back to 2018, back when the graphics on my blog left a lot to be desired, I did this post on a horse named Gronkowski, who was owned by former NFL tight end Rob Gronkowski. And this horse raced in the Kentucky Derby in 2018. Now, this was actually the Belmont. Still a horse race nonetheless. Now, look at this. On the date that his horse finished second, Rob Gronkowski was 10,618 days old. In Gematria, golden ratio has matching 177 Gematria with Rob Gronkowski. And the golden ratio is 1.618. Rob Gronkowski, 10,618 days, 1.618. It's perfect. Well, now we find that the golden ratio is back. We start with Philip Rivers' initials, PR. P, the 16th letter, R, the 18th, 1618. Rivers retired from the NFL 16 years and 18 days after the first game he played in, which was the final game of the 2004 season. And look at his name in Gematria. In ordinal and reduction, Philip Rivers equals 161 and 80. Rivers was born during Brown lunation number 729. And if you're somewhat new to this channel, we talk about this a lot. Every new moon since 1923 has been numbered. And the lunation number during Rivers' birth was 729. The golden ratio equals 729 in standard. The word horseman equals 729 in trigonal gematria. And it's perfect that this is all happening in the year 2025. Now, I talked about this connection in my post on Tyrese Halliburton, another player from Indianapolis who tore his Achilles just like Daniel Jones. When Halliburton tore his Achilles, the score was 16-18. Now, it's appropriate that this all happens in the year 2025. The golden ratio equals 225. 1.618 equals 2025. The Indianapolis Colts, Jones, Achilles heel, Achilles tear, horse, and even the name Cena all also equal 225. All right, so for the next part, I want to take a step back and look again at the connections to the Catholic Church. Now, again, back in the year 2023, which is certainly not a mistake, skull and crossbones with the 223, we get this Indiana Jones movie, right? Which has that matching 527 gematria with Daniel Jones's birthday. Well, this movie also sums to 310 in the alphabetic order, which represents the number 31 in numerology. This brings us to Philip Michael Rivers, whose full and last names equal 301. The sun, also 301 in Fibonacci. Daniel Jones getting injured 301 days after the last Super Bowl. But why am I talking about this number 31? Well, the 31st prime number is 127. Daniel Jones' injury occurred on December 7th, or 12/7. This week has been 127 weeks since the release of that Indiana Jones movie. And this is all about a retirement, which equals 127. I put this graphic here as well because Max Verstappen won the race in Formula One on the same day as Jones's injury. Both of these men were born in the year 1997. 127 days apart from one another. I'll touch more on Verstappen's numbers in a little bit here. But consider how the new pope is an Augustinian, which connects to 127. The Catholic Church headquartered in Vatican City, which has double gematria of 127. The sun shares 127 gematria with Proton, which is the name of the white horse that was gifted to Pope Leo in October. There's always been a Catholic connection with Philip Rivers as well. Because if you look up his retirement, initial retirement anyway, notice how he retired on January 20th of 2021. January 20th of 2021 is the same day that Joe Biden became the U.S. president. Now, Joe Biden is just the second Catholic president in the history of the United States. On top of that, he was the 46th U.S. president. Catholic equals 46, just like Vatican City. The new pope is an Augustinian, which equals 46. The name Rivers is 46, so is his number 17. And when he returned to the cults, it was on a date with numerology of 46. Now, back in the year 2020, when Philip Rivers played his first game for the Indianapolis Colts, it was on Pope Leo's 65th birthday. And the word horse equals 65 in the alphabetic order. Now, Pope Leo, of course, took over for the deceased Pope Francis, who died on April 21st. That date can be written 421. Notice how those numbers were found in Daniel's age when he suffered his Achilles tear. 421 is also found in the Gematria of Philip Michael Rivers, who now unretires. In the same cipher that unretires equals 421, both Vatican City and solar eclipse equals 421. That's the 82nd prime number, which connects to a wealth of other items. Set the number 17, Pope Francis's real name 82, torn Achilles tendon 82. It happened on the anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor, which equals 82. Now, just like Daniel Jones was born in the year 1997, so was Max Verstappen, and Verstappen won the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix on the date of his injury. That was Max Verstappen's 71st win in Formula One. Torn Achilles equals 71 in reverse reduction. And now we get Rivers coming back. Rivers equals 71. Rivers returned 7 months and 1 day after the election of Pope Leo, the new head of the Catholic Church in the Vatican City, both Catholic and Vatican City, 71. Leo turned 70 years, 1 month old, just 1 day before he was gifted the white horse. He's an Augustinian, which shares 71 Gematria with the Society of Jesus, which gave us Jorge Bergoglio as the last pope. Solar Eclipse and Harrison Ford also share this number. Okay, before I go on about the Catholic Church, I do need to point this out. So Philip Rivers has birth numerology that connects to the word eclipse, right? Could have mentioned that earlier, but this eclipse over Indianapolis, I want you to think about this for a second, right? The eclipse happened on April 8th or 4/8, which had numerology of 56. Well, the name Philip Rivers is spelled with just one L, which harkens back to a member of the royal family, Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. And you got to admit this is interesting, right? Philip Rivers returns to the NFL exactly 4 years and 8 months, which is also 56 months after Prince Philip died. The 48th prime number is 223. The 56th prime number is 263. And that brings us to the skull and crossbones, 223 and 263. Remember, the second eclipse completed the skull and bones eclipses, right? The pattern of the cross, just like the pattern of the bones under the emblem. And Rivers retired initially just before Philip died. It was less than 3 months earlier. "79 days, in fact. 2 months, 20 days. We looked at these connections earlier. All right, so measuring again from the eclipse over Indianapolis to Daniel Jones's injury was a span of exactly 87 weeks. And of course, Indiana Jones played by Harrison Ford, which equals 870. Well, now the quarterback that might be replacing him, Philip Rivers, was born exactly 807 weeks before Jones. Jorge Bergoglio was the last Catholic pope, both 870. But the new Catholic pope is Leo XIV, which shares 87 ordinal gematria with the sun. Rivers came back a span of 87 days after Leo's birthday. 87, the name that Leo shares with the sun. And of course, in astrology, Leo is the only sign ruled by the sun. Leo, the lion, right? If you want more on this riddle, check out my last video on the lion, Leo Messi, Lionel, winning Miami's first MLS Cup. So speaking of the sun is approximately 864,000 miles across, which is also a number connected to time, as there's 86,400 seconds in each day. Leo became Pope 8,640 days after the 9/11 attacks in New York. And now we get the injury of former New York quarterback Daniel Jones, which equals 864. When Philip Rivers first retired in 2021, Daniel Jones was 8,640 days old. And he got injured on the anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor, which equals 864 satanic. Also, if you look at the number of days between Rivers and Jones's birthday, you get a number whose divisors sum to 8640. If you add up these divisors here, they sum to 8640. Now, next, I want to point out how all of these characters have always been aligned with this eclipse over Indianapolis. First, look at Jim Irsay's age on that date. 64 years, 300 days. Meanwhile, Daniel Jones was 1,402 weeks old exactly. Both of these numbers are found in the gematria of the new pope, Robert Prevost, 643 and 1402. That's the real name of Pope Leo XIV. In satanic gematria, which once again is a cipher constructed around the number 666, Pope Leo XIV equals 489. Daniel Jones was exactly 1,489 weeks old when Rivers came back to the NFL. 1489 is also a prime number. The 237th prime. Well, this was a number I talked about in connection to Pope Leo, who was elected 237 days after his birthday, on the date leaving 237 days in the year. This pope is a member of the Order of St. Augustine, which equals 237 ordinal. This matches the name of the Grand Prix winner on Sunday, Max Emilian Verstappen, 237. Verstappen born on the 273rd day of the year. Well, this brings us back to the current lunation number. Currently, we are under Brown lunation 1273. The name Daniel Stephen Jones equals 273 with capital letters. So does Pope Leo XIV and total eclipse. But of course, there's more. Look at how old Philip Rivers was for the eclipse over Indianapolis. Exactly 2,209 weeks old. The last two popes, Francis and Prevost, both equal 229. Remember, the current pope's real middle name is even Francis. This is also the 50th prime number, like Colt and Jim Irsay. Leo became the Pope 22 months and 9 days after Indiana Jones hit theaters. 2209, however, is the 47th triangular number. Total eclipse equals 47. Pope has double gematria of 47. Both Francis and Vatican, 47 as well. All right, a little more about the Skull and Bones code and how it ties into these eclipses. I always thought it was interesting that the phrase Yale Skull and Bones equals 3,030 with square numbers. Now, if you instead measure from the first Great American Eclipse back in August of 2017, the first of two eclipses over the United States, Daniel Jones got hurt 3,030 days after that eclipse. The Indianapolis Colts, 303 with capital letters. The team's owner shares 330 gematria with torn Achilles tendon. The word eclipse equals 33. Jones's injury was exactly 33 weeks after the death of the Pope. The Pope equals 330. Achilles and horses, both 33 in reduction. The number 33 has ordinal gematria of 156. 156 is a huge eclipse number, as eclipses always occur 1, 5, or 6 lunar phases after the last one. And in ancient Hebrew, the word used for eclipse equals 156. In English, eclipse the sun, plane of the sun, both 156. So what are the odds that Daniel Jones tears his Achilles, which equals 156, 156 days after Independence Day? This number also shared between Jim Irsay and the Pope, both 156. Well, of course, the 156th prime number is 911. 156 is also the 119th composite number. So you can't understate how significant this number is to the 911 code. Again, the USA with the 9/11 connection to Sunday's injury. Look at how old Daniel Jones was when the Pope died, by the way. 10,191 days old, the same 5 digits. When Pope Leo got his horse, it was 119 weeks after the release of the new Indiana Jones movie. It was also 1 year, 191 days after the eclipse over the United States. Another important number to the eclipse code is 201. And this makes a lot of sense because when you look up in the sky, the two largest circles intersect into 1, right? 2 becoming 1. Both eclipse ritual and eclipse code equal 201. The last pope was from the Jesuit order. His name, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, matches 201 just like the Jesuit order. He lived in Suite 201 at the Domus Sanctae Marthae. The city of Indianapolis shares 201 gematria with skull and crossbones. And now we get an Achilles injury, which equals 201. Philip Rivers played in his first ever NFL game on the 2nd of January, or 201. He then retired on the 20th of January, or 20/1. He made his return to the NFL this week on a date with 21 numerology. Pope Leo got his new horse exactly 21 weeks after the death of the Colts owner. Well, the 21st square number is 441. And Philip Rivers came back to the NFL at 44 years, 1 day of age. This is also found in Daniel Jones's multiplicative birth numerology, 4410. The word moon also has double gematria of 21. Now, look at all of the 223 connections I came across as well. Of course, skull and crossbones equals 223, the inverse of 322. Rivers turned 2,023 weeks old after his first game with the Colts in 2020. He returned to the NFL 2 months and 23 days before the next total lunar eclipse. Daniel Jones got hurt 22 weeks, 3 days after Independence Day and 2 months, 23 days after Pope Leo's birthday. That injury was also 2 years, 23 weeks exactly after the release of the new Indiana Jones film, which came out 2 years, 23 weeks exactly after Philip Rivers retired. And now Rivers unretires 894 days after the movie came out. Skull and Bones equals 894. When Pope Francis passed away, Rivers was 2,263 weeks of age. Remember the 263 because skull and crossbones is 263, just like Order of the Skull and Bones. The new Pope, Robert Francis Prevost, is 263 in ordinal. Skull and Bones formed 20,603 days after the Declaration of Independence was signed. Rivers retired 263 weeks before this year's Super Bowl. And I pointed this out when Jim Irsay died, because both Colts and horse equals 263. And Jim Irsay's death was 263 days before the Super Bowl. And now Jones gets hurt 63 days before the Super Bowl. Jones, Daniel Jones, Irsay, Pope Leo. all connecting to the 63. Indiana Jones is, of course, played by famous actor Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford was exactly 13 years and 9 weeks old when Pope Leo XIV was born. His papal name sums to 139 and 1309 in Gematria. And look at how well Harrison Ford connects to this code of eclipses. For starters, he was born on the date 7/13, which is total eclipse in standard. When Indiana Jones got hurt, Ford's age ended in 463. Total eclipse equals 463. So does Catholicism. That's the 90th prime number, bringing us to the Indianapolis Colts and the moon. Harrison Ford is currently 83 years old. Both Yale University and Brotherhood of Death give us the 83. The school was founded on the date leaving 83 days in the year. Ford was 149 days, or 4 months, 26 days after his birthday for River's return. These numbers are connected to Skull and Bones, Indianapolis, Yale, which is a riddle for the Catholic Church. Also, torn Achilles and Rivers both share that 426. I also included a section on the gematria of the horse Proton that was gifted to Pope Leo. Proton has this special 322 with prime numbers, as well as a 64, which is another big Skull and Bones number. Jones went down on a date with 64 numerology with a torn Achilles, which equals 64, like Colts. The horse's name also equals 530, which is also a solar eclipse number. Daniel Jones got hurt 53 days after Proton was given away. Also 5 months, 3 days after Independence Day. Philip Rivers will be exactly 530 months old for the Super Bowl. Philip, the lover of horses, I'm sure he would love this horse Proton. Proton also equals 195. Daniel Jones gets hurt 195 days after his birthday. He was born 195 days before Rivers' birthday. His full name, Daniel Stephen Jones, sums to 195 like Eclipse the Sun. To wrap this all up, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to touch on professional wrestling and the big event coming up on Saturday night when John Cena retires and how this is all connected to Philip Rivers. Now, earlier we looked at this phrase, Philip Rivers unretiring, because it had this huge double 1700, right? Like how 17 is 1700. This same phrase also equals 1776 in Sumerian Gematria. On the date that Daniel Jones tore his Achilles, John Cena was 17,760 days old. This was the same day that Max Emilian Verstappen got the win in Abu Dhabi. Verstappen's full name, also 1776. 1776 is the birth year of the United States, which is represented by the Star-Spangled Banner, the nickname for our flag, which equals 1776 in Sumerian. This brings us back to the big 9/11 riddle with the United States and Daniel Jones. But also check this out. When Phillip Rivers played his first ever NFL game, John Cena was 10,116 days old. And if you flip 10,116 days upside down, you get the digits 91101. I mean, we're talking about 5-digit number connections here. This is so far removed from random coincidence, I can't even stomach it. Cena even announced his retirement 1 year, 160 days before his last match. When John Cena had his first ever WWE match against Kurt Angle back in 2002, notice how Phillip Rivers turned 20 years, 203 days old the very next day. Rivers then returned to the NFL 1,223 weeks later. John Cena's full name equals 223 in the alphabetic order. John Cena also equals 187, like Brotherhood of Death. Don't forget, eclipses from the same Sorrow series are separated by 223 synodic months. And in ancient Hebrew, the word for moon equals 223. John Cena's having his last match on December 13th, or 12/13. Phillip Rivers first retired from the NFL during Brown lunation number 12/13. When he announced his comeback yesterday, Rivers was 16,072 days of age, while John Cena was born during Brown lunation 6/7/2. And the name Rivers also makes a lot of sense in regards to the moon, right? Because the only sign that the moon rules in the zodiac is Cancer, which is a water sign. And the moon is often used as a symbol of water. Think about how it governs the tides on our globe. Now, next up, we need to talk about the number 423. As this is all connected to the birthday of John Cena. When you write out the moon, it equals 423 in standard Gematria. In ordinal, 2,160 miles is 423. That's the equatorial diameter of the moon. Well, less than a week ago, John Cena was featured on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. And look at the episode number. JRE 2,423. This matches Cena's 423 birthday. John Cena is exactly 4 years, 230 days older than Phillip Rivers. Rivers was 42 years, 30 weeks old when Cena announced his retirement. Phillip Rivers was retired for 4 years, 323 days. He announced his comeback 10,423 days after Daniel Jones was born, the guy he's replacing for the Colts. Pope Leo was 25,423 days old when Pope Francis died. Using prime numbers, both torn Achilles and Achilles tendon equals 423. Prince Philip equals 423. That's fun. But in the same prime cipher, lunar eclipse equals 423. And this brings us to the last riddle for this video, the lunar eclipse code. When Daniel Jones played his first game for the Colts this season, it was on September 7th. And on September 7th, we had a total lunar eclipse. And it was lunation 1270. Of course it was. Talked about the 127 earlier, but notice how this eclipse belonged to Saros series number 128. Well, Philip Rivers was born on 12/8, December 8th. And now Rivers announces his return a span of 3 months and 3 days after that lunar eclipse. Both lunar and eclipse equals 33. In ancient Hebrew gematria, the phrase for total lunar eclipse is 445. Cena was 1,445 weeks old when Rivers played his first game. And now Rivers will be 44 years and 5 days old for Cena's last match. In English, total lunar eclipse equals 1,690. John Cena and Philip Rivers were born 1,690 days apart. Cena will also be 169 days after the anniversary of his first match for his last match. $169 is 13 times 13, and Cena was 1,313 weeks old for his WWE debut. Philip Rivers didn't play in the NFL until after he turned 23 years old. Cena's WWE career lasting 23 years. The name Cena equals 23 in ordinal, a lot like total lunar eclipse, which is 203. This phrase also equals 256 in reverse, which is Pope Leo's age when he got the white horse, Proton. 25,600 days of age. Of course, this year has seen a lot of lunar eclipse riddles with the NFL. And this is because we had a lunar eclipse on Pi Day earlier this year, March 14th of 2025. Well, on March 14th of 1925, exactly 100 years before that eclipse, we had the death of Walter Camp, a.k.a. the father of American football. Walter Camp was a graduate of Yale University and a member of the Skull and Bones Society. Okay, one more thing before I go, because, again, just to further show that this is all connected to Skull and Bones. When Jim Irsay died earlier this year, it was on May 21st. And May 21st is also the date in history that Skull and Bones founding member Alfonso Taft died. Irsay died exactly 134 years after Alfonso Taft. 134 like solar eclipse and Vesica Piscis. This whole thing is about the number 17, which equals 134. 17 also equals 990. The eclipse over Indianapolis, which was 9 months and 9 days after the new Indiana Jones movie, was on the 99th day of the year. 99 has ordinal gematria of 129, and that's like the date of Philip Rivers' return, December 9th, or 12/9. The words unretires and unretired both equal 129, just like horse with capital letters. The previous horse quarterback, Daniel Jones, was 10,209 days old when Leo became the Pope. And Jones was even born on a date with 129 numerology. Let's see, the number 17 had so many riddles connected to it. You might find a couple more in my posts, which are all linked down below in the description. You'll also find links to the video and post I made on Aaron Rodgers' Achilles injury. Also, the 3 players who wear the number 0 in the NBA, all of whom suffered a torn Achilles during the playoffs. I did a video and some posts on that as well, so those are in the description below. But you got to ask, what is going on with all of these torn Achilles in the year 2025? All occurring by the numbers of the golden ratio, right? As we explored in connection with Tyrese Halliburton and others. Rob Gronkowski, whose horse finished second at the Belmont. And now we get this golden ratio riddle with the horse teams of the NFL. I just talked about this for an hour, and I'm sure there's more to unpack. But again, I try to keep my sanity and wrap my videos up before I go totally crazy. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up. Thanks to everybody who made it this far. If you did, please do feel free to like, share, subscribe, all that goody-good Two Shoes YouTube stuff. If you'd like to take it a step further, check the links in the description to learn how you can become a member of Gematrinator.com, which serves a number of purposes, keeps the site online, gives you a number of tools to help empower your decoding, also supports my work and these videos on YouTube and on my blog. So I think this makes for a nice funky end, don't you? Thanks once again. Peace, love, God bless. We'll talk to y'all next time. See ya.